Senator Whelan.
I would like to take the opportunity, first of all, to welcome Minister McGuinness to the House. I know that he's a man who is well familiar with the issues we're raising here, and as a minister who is conscientious about his local community and understands the problems and the concerns we're raising here this evening. And of course, I'd like to second the motion after being put by my colleague Senator Landy. However, I'm not at all impressed, I have to say. I have to put it on the record, Cathaoirleach, I'm sorry to say, that the Minister for Justice has decided, not for the first time in my opinion, not to come before the House to take the motion. There have been numerous examples of where there was justice-related private members' motions.
There is no control over which minister comes.
I just wish to put it on the record, Cathaoirleach, with respect, and also matters on the adjournment, where the Minister has delegated to other ministers and deferred to other ministers on an ongoing basis. And I'm a bit uncomfortable with that. I prefer if he was here to hear our concerns directly. I think it is nonetheless a timely motion, even though it has its genesis, in fact, a few months ago when the Labour Senate group first put forward the suggestion. It was deferred over the Christmas period, and it's not only topical, but it's actually very pertinent in the current climate, because unfortunately the need for such a motion was brought home to us over the Christmas and New Year period, yet again, particularly in rural areas where elderly people in isolated areas found themselves exposed and vulnerable to unscrupulous people who will take advantage of them and bring terror really into their lives. And I can't imagine what it would be like to happen to a family member or someone in our own area. It's not just, however, a rural issue. It does apply also in the large urban centres. Last year, in fact, to be fair to the Senate, on a number of occasions we highlighted serious issues and crimes and attacks and assaults in the city here itself, some of them in broad daylight, some of them on the main thoroughfares of Dublin City, some of them which resulted in people's deaths. Indeed, a former journalistic colleague was one of the victims of such an assault and such an attack. So we cannot be complacent, and we cannot say that we're comfortable, that we are doing the right thing and that our policy is intact if people are unsafe in their own homes and are unsafe on the main streets of our towns and cities. I brought it up before Christmas again, where people were afraid in broad daylight to walk and traverse and do their shopping on the main street of Mount Mellick town. And this is not acceptable. It is the case that, to be fair, considerable resources have been made available, as Senator Landy has pointed out, for a new fleet of up to 200 new Garda patrol cars. I'd like to know when they will be dispatched. We were told over December and January that would be when they would be commissioned. I certainly haven't seen any of them yet on the streets of Laois Offaly, and I would like to see them out and about at the earliest possible time. I'm not at all hung up, and I've done some research with Garda colleagues and Garda members, and indeed retired Gardaí, on the issue of the closure of stations per se. It isn't about trying to retain a building for the sole purpose of just having a building there with one Garda attached to it. But it is the problem when by that Garda then, if that Garda number is lost to the force, or if the level of manpower is lost to the area, or indeed redeployed to somewhere else where entire swathes of the countryside are left without Garda cover. In fact, I think it's one of the mistakes we have made is to close the Garda Training College in Templemore. I cannot understand how we're going to continue with adequate policing into the future. And I don't think the answer is that we should shorten the time in which training will occur. I saw it mooted at some stage where when the Garda College reopens, they're saying that the training period would be reduced down from 2 years. I think that would be a mistake. I think we need new Gardaí and new blood within the forces and within the ranks, but I think it's important that they get properly resourced and properly trained, and I don't think that should be fast-tracked. I think that would be unwise. Another suggestion I'd like to put to you, Minister, is that up to 10 years ago, members of the Defence Forces could transfer seamlessly to other sections within that department, if you like. They could transfer into the prison service, and they could transfer into the Garda Síochána seamlessly without any loss, if you like, of service, and that, of course, they would have to be properly trained up. But I think that is something that we should explore. I'm sure there are many members of the Defence Forces today who might like to take up the opportunity to transfer into the Garda and this would help shore up Garda numbers at a time when I think, as Senator Landy has pointed out, we cannot possibly say we're going to have adequate policing and allow the numbers to drop much further. Because I do think that people are reassured by Garda presence and Garda visibility and Garda patrols. And I do also welcome the announcement from the Minister, to be fair, that part of the new policy and strategy will be to redeploy Garda resources to make sure that there is a more adequate patrolling, more significant policing on the streets. Because you could go for weeks on end, quite frankly, in parts, in towns in the country, Minister, and not come on a guard on the beat like we used to traditionally. And I do think it's very important that people are reassured during the day and in the evenings at night, and it also serves for the purpose of local knowledge, interfacing with the local community and establishing and developing good relationships, which in turn, I think, leads to crime prevention, which is the most important part, I believe, of deterrent that's involved. At the moment, there is no doubt in my mind, Minister, whatsoever, that many parts of rural Ireland in particular are soft targets for roaming gangs who know that the Garda resources are stretched to the limit, that the response time is not adequate, that in fact they can perhaps set up decoys to distract the Gardaí and what the patrol car to one area while they...
1 minute.
Thank you very much, Cathaoirleach. While they conduct their dirty deeds elsewhere and rain terror, particularly down on old people living in isolated areas. I also, like Senator Landy, want to commend the work of Neighbourhood Watch and community alert schemes throughout the country. They do have a useful purpose. I know this full well in my own area, in Timahoe and Rathneske. They work very well. And it is a source of comfort to people. And I have to commend the Gardaí who are involved in setting up these, and many retired Garda are involved in supporting these schemes. However, it must be underpinned by a Garda response time, by Garda resources, and by ongoing liaison with Gardaí on the ground, because signage up on the side of the road saying community alert area, text alerts are not enough. Minister, I want to sum up and say that we do all have a collective responsibility in this area. I do accept that, and that's what we're trying to achieve here today, that perhaps schemes and such initiatives could be put in place that have worked in the UK and other larger towns and cities, where people come together to support the Gardaí in their work. And I don't want to be alarmist when I say this, but it has been mentioned to me, and I'll finish up now, Cathaoirleach, on more than one occasion, that if we do not put policies in place that restore Garda visibility and Garda patrols throughout our towns and villages, it will lead, I'm afraid to say, as it has in the past in some parts of the country, to a resurgence and to people taking the law into their own hands, which I do not condone or support, and it will see, I believe, an upsurge in vigilantism in parts of the country, with people fearing that they have to take the law into their own hands to protect the people in their own communities. I'd like to take these points on board, Minister, and relay them back to Minister Shatter when you get the opportunity. Thank you.